Good morning, everyone. It's a very hot day today, so I've got lots of fans blowing in the background. I hope they're not going to disturb this recording. I have been working quite hard. Oh, this is Bella, the new addition. Wanted to be on the interview. I've been working quite hard on this new video, and each time I thought I was finished, something dramatic keeps happening around the world, like the Trump assassination attempt, and now these cyber attacks, amongst other things. So I've had to change the layout of my recording today to try and bring in some of the latest issues. And then I will bring out a second video in the next couple of days on the subjects that I had previously been working on. But today I'm going to be talking about, and not in any particular order, but the UK election, Julian Assange, obviously what's going on with the Trump situation, the Q phone, Space Force, and lots of other things. Elon Musk. There's lots to discuss today. So quickly moving on to the first item, the UK election. So in the previous video, they had said to us that if there were going to be any delays or postponements to the UK elections, it would be because of some kind of cyber attack. And interestingly, that didn't occur. But obviously now we've seen it happen just a couple of weeks later in the USA. So I don't know if they were trying to tell us that it was linked in that way. Anyway, I actually had asked them the question, about the fact that because we didn't see any cyber attacks in the UK, did that now mean that the UK were not actually up to speed with the USA timeline? Because what they had said in the previous video was that a cyber attack in the UK around the election time would be an indication to where the UK were in terms of where they're up to on the timeline, in terms of marrying up with the USA template or plan. So I asked them about the UK election, and I said, the UK election going ahead, does this reflect that the USA election of 2024 will also now go ahead without disruption or delay? And they said no. They said the election of the UK was a marker to show what stage we are at with the military worldwide peace plan, and that no disruption to the UK election implies that they are not yet up to speed in the UK with all their layers and policies. He said, however, the two candidates, Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak, are both working for the White Hats, and as is Boris Johnson. They said everything is scripted to distract everybody, whilst the devolution of governance is being set up in the background. They also said that it is possible that another general election in the UK may be necessary before the end of the current term due to disruption or outside influences. And I said, what sort of disruption might that be? They said mostly it's going to be an overhaul of the financial system and devolution of government policy and procedure to the people. And this will create a need to re-elect and reorganise the UK government in its current form at a national level. I said, Keir Starmer, he knew Jimmy Savile, who, if people don't know who Jimmy Savile is, he was somebody who for many years was associated with, he was in the public eye. He had television programs where he worked with children, and he had close links with the royal family. And after his death, it was discovered that he had a long history of being a paedophile. So I asked them, Keir Starmer, he knew Jimmy Savile as a child and was later involved in the legal counsel regarding Savile, because Keir Starmer is a barrister, or was a barrister. And I said, why did Starmer not prosecute Savile at that time? He said to me that in the old setups, the deep state setup, it was extremely difficult to prosecute people associated with the establishment, for example, the royal family. And it is likely that Keir Starmer and the legal team were warned off of a prosecution at that time. It is likely that to not heed this warning could result in danger or damage to their careers, their family, or their reputations, for example. It did say that, however, Keir Starmer is a white hat advocate and is now taking the opportunity to correct this miscarriage of justice. And it is very likely that the Savile case, despite its implications to the aristocracy, will be re-examined. So I said, could this re-examination be the way that the royal family is further dismantled in the eyes of the public? And they said absolutely. So we also, in this recent UK election, now have our first female UK Chancellor. The Chancellor oversees the financial setup of the UK. And I wanted to know, is this another move to reinstate more balanced divine feminine energies, bring them into balance in the UK and around the world? And they said no. They said the appointment actually of Rachel Reeves as the Chancellor of the Exchequer was purely a strategic move. And as a white hat operative, they said she will oversee the UK's part in setting up and initiating a new devolved financial system, and that she was seen to have the correct white hat vibration necessary to implement future financial setups moving forward. They said that Rachel Reeves has a humanitarian energy, is good at negotiating, and believes in devolution. Then wanted to ask about, before the general election, Rishi Sunak had been talking a lot about conscription, which is national service. This means when people leave school, they go automatically into 1 year of national service in the military, and I think it would be compulsory. So I wanted to ask all around what that was. Rishi Sunak and the conscription national service proposals, I said to them, was that again to awaken people so that they can discern between government imposed rules and sovereignty? And they said, yes, this policy narrative was again part of the military psychological program to help people find their voice, their sovereignty. So it was another narrative that probably has no future, but because the White Hats know, what's planned in terms of who's going to take what position in the future and in what role, because it's all scripted, and this was just another part of the storyline so that people would begin to discuss amongst themselves what they will and won't accept. It's just a part of the program of awakening the public. So this also leads into the discussion around the digital ID scheme that the UK seemed to be discussing. I wanted to know whether the digital ID scheme that they're discussing is going to go ahead. They said to me that in the future, your consciousness will be read as your Q consciousness ID. So a physical ID as such is going to become obsolete. They said that the quantum borders will be able to read your consciousness to allow for freedom of movement. And they did say that a digital ID before that point, i.e. before we have the Q consciousness ID, there is going to be a digital ID before that point, which is designed to create discussion and awareness so that people can see the difference between top-down authority, which equals control, and sovereignty, which equals freedom. So I said, so will a digital ID go ahead? They said it is intended that a digital ID system will be implemented in the UK, and this will help to provide important data to help the quantum system set up the freedom of movement scheme in the future. Everyone has to be registered initially to assess their geographical location. And then later on, the consciousness ID, the Q consciousness ID, will be able to use this data to help it assess that it is actually you. So the physical digital ID will be obsolete in the future as technology will be able to read your thoughts and your consciousness. So my understanding of a lot of these controversial concepts, like Jimmy Savile, like the digital ID, like conscription, these are all topics that are deliberately designed to get people discussing and thinking about where their passions lie and how much they want to give up their freedoms to the government and how much they're willing to take responsibility, because obviously now we're moving towards a devolved system and people need to be able to discern between what is their true feelings and what they're being told to do by the government or the media. And this is all part of the psychological program of undoing everything that has previously been brainwashed into people via the media and the governments for many, many years. And by creating these controversial dialogues, it helps people to think for themselves and to assess where they want to go in the future. So the next piece of big news that came out is around Julian Assange. Now, 4 years ago, when I first started speaking on YouTube, I did say that Julian Assange was not held in a London prison, that was all a facade, and that Julian Assange was actually working behind the scenes with the Q team, and that he had been working with Donald Trump and released at an earlier stage. So then obviously now we've had the news that he was released from London. And I wanted to look all around now that Julian Assange has officially been released, what that might mean for him going forward in the future. So for those of you who don't know who Julian Assange is, Julian Assange, he ran an organization called WikiLeaks, and it was a website that published many confidential, and controversial and restricted official reports related to war, spying, and corruption. And in 2010, it released a video from a US military helicopter which showed civilians being killed in the Iraqi capital of Baghdad. And after a number of legal wranglings, Assange essentially ended up in London under an asylum process. Assange was later arrested and sentenced to 50 weeks in prison. So, as I said, my understanding from my previous channelings was that Assange didn't go to the Belmarsh prison, even though we have footage of him going there and being seen. My understanding is he's actually been working with the Q team all this time. So I wanted to ask about this. So I said, Julian Assange, was his public release staged? And they said yes. They said that Julian Assange has been working for the Q team for many years in the background, and this actually had occurred as soon as Trump took office. However, the public release storyline is another step in allowing and training the public in this military psychological plan. The consciousness of the public is at a vibration and frequency where they are starting to understand at deeper levels that everyone is vulnerable if they don't take a stand for free speech, autonomy, and sovereignty. So then I asked, will Julian Assange work under the Delta wing of the Space Operations Command in the future if he's actually been working alongside the Q team all this time? Is he going to be brought in to work with Space Operations Command? And they said that Julian Assange is already working for the Q team, which is the top team, which actually oversees Delta, which is under Space Operations Command. So I said, is Julian Assange working with Elon Musk? And they said all of the Q team are working alongside and with Elon Musk. So then I said, how will Julian Assange be seen publicly going forward now? They said that Julian Assange will be honoured publicly in the future, and his bravery, they said that his bravery in being a whistleblower ahead of his time will be celebrated and formally recognised. And I said, is it likely that Musk and Assange will collaborate publicly on any future projects? And they said, no, a collaboration is unlikely to be witnessed publicly. Doesn't mean that won't occur, but it's unlikely to be seen publicly. They said, but Assange is already an advisor to Musk's team for some time, and it might be seen that Elon Musk and Assange are friends at a later date. I said, if Musk and Assange were to collaborate publicly in the future, what would that look like? Again, they said they won't publicly be seen to collaborate on projects, but they may be shown to be friends going forward with support for and showing support for each other. They said usually the Q team members and collaborators are kept separate for safety. Then I said, is Elon Musk the original Elon Musk that started out with Tesla? And they said yes. And they said sometimes body doubles stand in for security purposes. I said, so Elon Musk is not gone or dead or incarcerated? And they said no. I said, will President Trump be seen to honor Julian Assange publicly in the future? And they said Julian Assange will be honoured publicly by many people in the future. So now I want to look around the Trump shooting in Pennsylvania. So I was initially sent a very short video early in the morning after the event, where it showed Trump falling down and then jumping up and shouting "fight." And my initial reaction to that as an energy reader was that the reaction of Trump and the Secret Service seemed, I don't know if stage is the right word, but it didn't seem natural. Because I would imagine because my feeling is that in that kind of scenario, if you're being shot at, you would keep down. The security service would be more anxious, and they would have been urging him out of there more quickly. So my initial reaction, energetically, was that was part of the storyline. That was part of the awakening storyline for the public. So I did try to ask around this subject. They didn't really want to talk about it too much. So I only got a very small amount of information. But I said to them, the Trump shooting in Pennsylvania, was that a white hat or a dark hat attempt on his life? And they said the attack at Pennsylvania was a planned attack. And I said, who planned it? And they said both the dark hats and the white hats were involved on the day. And I said, in what way were the white hats involved? They said to me that the protection teams were aware of a potential attack, but didn't know how, when, or where in terms of which state. They said some people on the dark hat teams had been planning the attack on Trump for some time. They did say, however, that Trump was not in danger. He was well insulated. And on that day, the original day that I tried to channel, that was all they wanted to say. Then I went back in again yesterday and I tried again. So I asked them, the Trump assassination attempt, what was the plan or strategy behind this event? They said that strategy was to further raise the profile of Donald J. Trump, and that the incident obviously increased media coverage and attention in a good way towards Donald J. Trump. And many people will be looking at everything he is enduring with these court cases and obviously now this attack. And it may, in some cases, cause them to rethink their political allegiances or to think more deeply beyond personality politics. So, for example, it might cause them to think, how can one man create such worldwide interest, whether that be good or bad? And again, they said, it's all part of the psychological plan to awaken people so that they can start to pull back from years of mainstream media narratives and become discerning in choosing policy over people. So another thing that came into my email this week around this assassination attempt was the fact that Donald Trump, who we already know has the military communications platform of Truth Social, they've now extended or are extending their media and technology presence through a platform called Reclaim the Net. So Reclaim the Net is is Trump media's move into the streaming world, where free speech is going to meet tech expansion. So they're saying that TMTG, which stands for the Trump Media and Technology Group Core, have plans to further develop its media reach, and they're going to go into, they're going to acquire technological assets which are designed to boost its foray into streaming. And their vision, the Trump Media and Technology Group's vision, is to transform and strategically roll out a new content distribution network, which will start with the Truth Social movement, the Truth Social app, expanding into more standalone apps. They said that the TMTG, the Trump Media and Technology Group, is now geared to amplify its TV streaming services. And they said that the Trump Media and Technology Group, the TMTG, is preparing to launch a premium streaming service that stands resilient against being silenced by larger technology corporations, with the focus on hosting an array of content from news shows, religious channels, and family-friendly content to programs under threats of cancellation or already cancelled shows. And this service aims to diversify the digital media landscape. So the email from Reclaim the Net said that the company behind Truth Social, President Donald Trump's well-known social media platform, the MTG Core, has plans to further develop its media reach, and that a fresh licensing agreement will now see the free speech firm acquire technological assets designed to boost its foray into streaming. The TMTG CEO, Devin Nunes, said, "We are rapidly pushing forward with our plans to launch a high-quality streaming service that we believe cannot be cancelled by big tech. We believe this agreement will enable us to build a superior tech stack to support a cutting-edge streaming service. It's a major step in fulfilling our mission to strengthen free expression and end big tech's stranglehold on digital communication." So I asked some questions around Reclaim the Net, which is part of the Truth Social network. I said, will Reclaim the Net, will this platform replace mainstream media going forward? And they said no. They said that mainstream media will only stop due to what the people's free will dictates. So it's up to them to decide if they want to watch or not watch certain outlets. So it's not like the mainstream media is going to be stopped. It's just that this platform is going to be added to it. It's just that this platform is going to be added to the options of media going forward, streaming media. I said, what would make people turn away from mainstream media, the mainstream media outlets going forward? And they said, going forward, people will naturally gravitate towards media outlets that they deem to be censorship-free and fair, with a non-biased or who are non-influenced in their policy and their reporting. So Reclaim the Net is part of the TMTG core, they said, which is overseen by the military in terms of its cybersecurity. They said it will be part of the Q communications going forward and will fall under the broadcasting wing of Starshield. They said it is therefore a platform that is likely to be powered by SpaceX. I talked about SpaceX and their bounce system in previous videos. So they said that this means that any broadcasts cannot be interrupted should there be certain power outages, as the future phones and devices which previously were connected to, say, 5G and maybe 6G towers in the future, these are all going to now be rerouted to the satellite system. They said that the Musk direct-to-cell system will be used, and that communications will bypass the cell towers and speak directly to the satellites, and that the new Q phones will in some cases be powered by solar. So what they seem to be saying here is that the Reclaim the Net, which falls under the Trump Media and Technology Group, is associated with Q communications, which are going to be overseen by military cybersecurity, and that they're going to be powered through Starshield satellites, or run through the Starshield satellites, and that this will prevent, this will mean that even in a power outage or a cyber attack, that these, because they're powered from the satellites, that they can still, these media outlets and these phones will still be able to operate. So I asked them again, if the electrical grid goes out, can, as we've seen this week with the cyber attacks, I was saying, can the new system of direct-to-cell phones still operate? And they said yes. They said currently systems only run for the length of their battery life. So if you think about your cell phone, it currently only runs for the length of its battery life. But they said that in the future, they could be topped up by the electric from, say, solar or, the sun. And they said that the new bounce system, which I spoke about in a previous video, the new bounce system of charging the satellites, which are in space, will keep the direct-to-cell system running without the need for electrical power on the ground. They said, but hubs in the home, which are connected to the direct-to-cell or the TV, will also be powered by the bounce system from space, because this new bounce system will power the new Tesla electrical grid. And they said that this Tesla electrical grid, which will run from the satellite bounce system, will be a free energy system, and it won't require the current systems of power that we currently know, because it will run naturally and be able to recharge itself. They said that this self-charging grid system will be able to run the electrical grid in the future without disruption. The new Tesla phone, the Q phone, is it now able to do calls, videos, etc., without communication towers? So instead it would be using these direct satellite contacts, and they said yes. And I said, so how will this change the need for cell towers or 5G in the future? they said again that as technology evolves, the use of satellite communication will become commonplace, which in turn will mean a reduction in the cell towers that run on 5G. They said, however, healing towers of Tesla design may replace cell tower technology to create healing gardens or zones in the freedom cities. And I said, how long until these Q phones are going to be running for the public? They said approximately 12 to 18 months. And I said, will the Q phone be able to know your Q consciousness ID? He said, not initially, but in about 8 years, the Q consciousness ID will be able to work with the Q communications platform, and phones won't necessarily look like they do currently. I said, will there be a need for a hub in your house when the new direct-to-cell system comes onto the market? And they said no hub will be required, but the Starlink system will become more popular. And I said the True Social Network is a military communications setup. So does SpaceX or Starshield oversee it? And they said no, it's overseen by military operations. We did actually say at Colorado. So while we're talking about the top team, the Q team, and how they oversee these cybersecurity measures, I wanted to ask, what is the current focus of this Q team right now? And they said that the focus of the Q team currently is to align as much as possible, as is physically possible, to all sectors, geographical, financial, and regulatory, which are involved in the worldwide military peace plan, so that other initiatives can begin. And I said, what initiatives would these be? So they said that Q is mainly involved in initiatives around devolution of governance to the people, so that they can have secure voting programs, communications, and financial changes worldwide. And I said, what stage are the Q team at with regards to going live on these initiatives, especially with respect to the public seeing devolution clearly, as an example? And they said mostly the Q team initiatives are being implemented below the radar, moving pieces strategically into place, and that the media is their next soft disclosure and focus within the many angles of their strategic plan. So I said, when you say media, do you mean the Trump TV Reclaim the Net media? And they actually said no. They said, when we say media, we mean getting all the back office infrastructure ready and aligned to run communications under the new media and communications setups. And I said, what are the new media and communications setups? They said, Reclaim the Net is one portal where non-censorship will be implemented along with X. But they said the new communication systems will be more concerned with analog systems on the ground and satellite systems in space. And I said, so are we saying that cell towers, 5G towers, will be obsolete in the future regarding media and communications? And they said yes. And I said, so just to be clear, media in the future, meaning TV, internet, will be run via space and via satellites and not through towers or fixed phone lines? And they said yes. And so I said to them, so what's going to happen to companies that are currently providing, fiber optic internet or TV services or communication services where they use a telephone line? And they said they, over time, will become obsolete as people move more towards a Starlink system of a plug-in dish and a hub, which are all portable, and that the new phones and media will be beamed from space satellites. And I said, what will these 5G towers be used for going forward? And they said that the 5G towers in the future will mostly become obsolete, with Tesla healing frequency being used in certain regions to create the healing gardens, should the people choose that in their devolved voting community settings. So I asked them, is Trump Media and Tech Group, the TMTG, who's now setting up Reclaim the Net streaming service, is it going to be overseen by Q? They said it's not overseen by Q for company registration or its operation purposes, but at a security level, it is part of the Truth Social Network, which is a military communication setup. They said that Reclaim the Net and any of its corresponding apps or services, media or tech divisions will be secured under Delta Cybersecurity Wing as it's part of a military communications platform or setup. So I do have a document which is under the Starlink website from January of this year, where it says that Starlink had successfully sent and received its first text message via the T-Mobile network from the new direct-to-cell satellites. And this is connecting, and they're saying that connecting cell phones to satellites has several major challenges to overcome. So for example, in terrestrial networks, cell towers are stationary, but in a satellite network, they move at tens of thousands of miles per hour relative to users on Earth. And so this requires seamless handoffs between satellites and accommodations to allow for shifts and timing delays that can challenge phone-to-space communications. They said that cell phones are also incredibly difficult to connect to satellites, which are hundreds of kilometers away, given that a mobile phone's low antenna gain and power and transmit power. They said that Starlink satellites with the direct-to-cell payload are equipped with innovative new custom silicone with a phased array of antennas and advanced software algorithms that overcome these challenges, and they provide a service to cell phones on the ground. They're saying that as the global leader in rocket and satellite launch and manufacturing, SpaceX is uniquely positioned to rapidly scale our direct-to-cell network and will rapidly launch a constellation of hundreds of satellites to enable tech service in 2024 and voice data and Internet of Things services in 2025. So I'll put this document in the links below. So I also have a document from the 2nd of July 2024 explaining how SpaceX had launched its 100th direct-to-cell Starlink satellite on a Falcon 9 flight from Cape Canaveral, and I will also attach that information below. So another document that was sent to me recently is about a new spaceport, that's been approved and will soon be landing at the Strip of Las Vegas. This development is for a commercial spaceport near Las Vegas, and I will put the document below. They're saying that Space Perspective, which is a travel company, is already selling rides on this 10-person capsule, and that the company has already sold 1,250 seats or rides, and that spaceport officials are claiming that they will be able to conduct 15 flights a month with 6 passengers per flight, and that this project will also include a space pilot school, a hotel, an academy, a restaurant, and a rooftop observation deck. And there's also going to be a research and development company. They're saying that once constructed, the project will hold several space planes and will have a hangar space for other space vehicles. They're saying that construction of this spaceport in Las Vegas is due to begin in the next 6 months. So again, I will put that document in the links so you can read all about that. That was very interesting. And before we move away from space, I wanted to look at the Space Force, who are currently looking for experienced individuals to assist in creating essential documents like policies, regulations, procedures, and manuals. And they're looking, because their team is currently stretched so thin, they are looking for knowledgeable people to help them carry out this load, or to help them carry the load. And so they're asking for people who have got expertise in military regulations, legal frameworks, or things related. And again, I will put that information in the links below. And then I wanted to just look at the symbol around Space Force. Semper Supra means always above. And this symbol was first used in 1961. The Delta symbol honors the heritage of the United States Air Force and the Space Command. And if you look at the image, it's saying that the silver outer border of the Delta signifies defense and protection from all adversaries and threats emanating from the space domain, and that the black area inside embodies the vast darkness of deep space. Inside the Delta, the 2 spires represent the action of a rocket launching into the outer atmosphere in support of the central role of the Space Force in defending the space domain. The 4 beveled elements symbolize the joint armed forces supporting the space mission: Air Force, Army, Navy, and Marines. And in the center of the Delta is the star Polaris, which symbolizes how the core values guide the Space Force mission. And so this Delta symbol is the representation of the United States Space Force. Semper Supra, always above. So on the subject of space and the new spaceport and everything we know about Space Operations Command, somebody had asked me who owns space. I thought that was quite an interesting question. So I asked them who owns space, and they said that space in reality cannot be owned, but in order to set up the worldwide military peace plan, then certain doctrines, regulations, and structures need to be devised to create order and discipline. So I said, so will the following laws be applied in space, like, say, military law? And they said, no, there's going to be a new setup. I said, what about admiralty law? And they said, no, that's only for the sea, the land, or the air. And I said, what about the Artemis Accords, which I've spoken about in previous videos? And they said, the Artemis Accords, this is for the behavior of organizations in space regarding trade and acquisitions, but it's not actually about the ownership of the space. They said the ownership of space, or space law, will fall under the auspices of the Worldwide Military Peace Plan, and that the Federal Aviation Administration will coordinate with Space Force the areas of travel or movement before a vessel exits into zero gravity or space. So talking of the Worldwide Military Peace Plan, I now wanted to look around what's going on politically and how we might be moving towards this, this worldwide peace plan. And the first question I had was about the rise of politicians that seem to be opposed to the narratives that we generally term as left-wing politics. And it seems to me that there's a rise of politicians around the world that are opposed, that are coming into power, that are opposed to these far left narratives. And I said, are these politicians, are they white hats? And they said, yes. And I said, so Chega, the term used by Andre Ventura in Portugal, for instance, Chega meaning that's it now, enough. Chega literally means enough. So Andre Ventura is currently in the running for the election in Portugal. I said, is he a white hat? And they said, yes. I said, is Farage in the UK a white hat? And they said, yes. I said, Javier Milei from Argentina. They said, yes. And obviously, Andre Ventura. And we've also discussed today Keir Starmer, Rishi Sunak, and Boris Johnson. All these people are working for the military peace plan. And so I said, so the white hat plan in a peaceful world is set, it looks like it's set to stop illegal immigration, because a lot of the people I've mentioned above, that they seem to be talking about immigration. Interestingly, Pen, the French politician, she wasn't classed. She's often classed as extreme right wing, and I asked if she was a white hat, and they said that she's going to be replaced by a white hat. So that's interesting. So going back to my question, so the white hat plan in a peaceful world, is it set to stop illegal immigration? And they said, under the worldwide military peace plan and the introduction of the quantum borders, people will essentially be able to travel freely, and with the redistribution of local currencies to a digital currency, the world financial map will even out. and war will cease under the worldwide military peace plan. So people will only gravitate to locations just to go there for work or for leisure, as immigration won't be necessary. They said that people will be able to move freely under the quantum borders scheme. So I said, so will the visa system go? And they said yes. And I said, so people will move around based on desire and not like for financial motivations. Because as we know, people in poorer countries often gravitate towards countries which are seen as richer, so that they can earn money to send back to their families. So I said, so will sending money back to poor countries stop? And they said exactly. They said all the countries will be affluent in their own right, so there won't be that need to go to another country to earn money to send back. So there won't be a need to abuse anybody's, to come into any country to possibly abuse their system financially, because your country will already be affluent in its own right, or everybody's country will be affluent in its own right. So you will only be traveling or going to other countries purely for work or leisure, not to necessarily improve your financial status. So I said, so if people are free to move, then they might all end up in, the Bahamas. They might all decide, well, if we don't need a visa, we can just go wherever we want. Or they might just all go to certain locations on the map. And I said, so how will overcrowding in specific regions be controlled? And they said that numbers will be calculated by the quantum borders, and you will use, and even though you travel to another country, you'll still use resource from your own country of residence and birth, regardless if you relocate or not. So you will always be a citizen of the world, and you will pull down your resources no matter where you travel or live. So it's not like you're going to be, if you travel from your birth country to another country, you'll still be able to pull down resource, but you'll be pulling it down from your country of origin, not from the country that you're based in. So I said, just to be clear, if you're born in the UK and decide to live in the USA, that dependent on numbers, the quantum border will let you enter and live there while still being able to draw down your universal income from your own country. And they said yes. They said all resources are going to go to the quantum virtual vault, which I've spoken about in a previous video. And then from the quantum virtual vault, everything will be distributed based on a country's population in an equal way. So in my virtual vault video, I explained that all countries' assets from around the world are being tallied, added up, assessed, and whatever their value is in terms of physical asset like oil, gold, silver, diamonds, it's being reflected into the quantum virtual vault as a total number. The assets remain in those countries, they don't go anywhere, but the value of those assets is added to the quantum virtual vault, which is then turned into a digital balance, a digital currency balance. And from that digital currency balance, it's divided equally amongst 7 billion people, irrespective of where they are. Basically, 7 billion people get a percentage from that quantum virtual vault. And that percentage for each person is then allocated to their country of birth. And so in the future, if you that those, if there's so in the future, if there's 70 million people in the UK, then the quantum virtual vault will send 70 million parts of currency down to the UK, and again in each country, depending on their population, they'll receive an equal amount from that virtual vault for each person in their country, which is part of what the digital ID data is trying to establish right now. It's a little bit like when you have the census in the UK and you have to fill out, you know, who you are, where you live, how many people live in your house. It's a form of collecting data. Once they have the data of where everybody is born, where they're living, what numbers each country has within it, it helps them to distribute the currencies within the virtual vault. This then means that when you travel from the UK in the future, through the quantum borders, which are now going to be open and free, you'll be able to go into another country and still pull down from the quantum vault your universal basic income. I then wanted to talk about cultural issues that often are combined with talks about illegal immigration. And I wanted to talk about the hijab, which is the headwear that is often headwear that's often worn in Muslim culture. And I said certain countries and locations, they seem to have banned this headwear. And so if you want to visit or emigrate in the future, what's the policy going to be under the quantum borders and freedom of movement? And they said in the future, a visit to another location will require that you observe the local traditions or culture. And it is possible that the hijab may be banned if, after devolution of governance, the local people decide that they would prefer local customs and culture to be followed. So again, it looks like people in each region, each area, each district will be able to decide through devolution of governance how they want the rules of hijab or possibly other things related to culture to look. Currently, the hijab is allowed in Croatia, Greece, Poland, Portugal, and Romania. So whether those countries will again change their regulations on the hijab, whether that be countrywide or in certain locations, again will be decided in the future by devolution of governance, meaning the people will decide. So now I wanted to just have a quick look around the quantum financial system, which, as you know, is a trial system before we move into the Q financial system. And I wanted to know, is there going to be a global financial reset? And they said, yes, it is ongoing. And I said, what are the elements of the global financial reset? And is this the same as revaluation or RV? They said the elements of the global financial reset are basically all the elements we currently understand to be called the QFS or the quantum financial system. They said, however, the quantum financial system, or the QFS, as discussed previously, is a financial sting operation, and further down the line, the Q financial system will run JSARA and the Q consciousness ID. They said revaluation is the ongoing process of turning physical currency into digital currency on a one-to-one basis. So then I said, so will the dinar, dong, etc. be in the revaluation? And they said yes. And I said, will they go 1-to-1? And they said, no, not exactly. They will not go 1-to-1 against the dollar, as the dollar is being devalued and withdrawn around the world. The petrodollar is being replaced by local currency for trade. They said BRICS is the framework for this currency devaluation and withdrawal process. And so essentially a dinar or a dong will exchange 1-to-1, but into its own local currency once all the devolution is back to local currencies and is completed. And I said, so is anything stopping the global financial reset? And they said, no, it is already happening in layers worldwide, like BRICS is one layer, the quantum financial system is another layer, and the Q financial system is another layer. So I said, in the interim, the QFS financial system, what platforms and currencies will dominate? They said all platforms and currencies will be trialed before transitioning to the Q consciousness platforms, which are, for example, X.com banking, which is going to be Jasara. And I said, so X coin, is that for X.com Q banking network only? And they said yes, but they said that Dogecoin can work with the current trialing of the QFS, but that the X coin is only going to be used for X.com Q banking system. So we know that the Q financial system is going to be based on a consciousness ID. And so I just wanted to check in about consciousness. And I said, has there been a major consciousness shift again? And has this impacted outcomes that may occur on or around the USA elections of 2024? Said to me that there continues to be an exponential shift in consciousness and vibration worldwide, and people are waking up and not recognizing, versions of themselves from like yesterday, which is true. I wake up and it's like I can't even sort of think how I was a year ago. It's very interesting. They said, however, the timeline for the USA is still currently on track to either receive a delay or a major disruption to the election process. And I said, when you say election process, do you mean the actual election day? And they said, yes, at this current time, it is anticipated that major disruptions may begin on or around October 24. A few days after I channeled this, we've seen cyber attacks worldwide on banking and hospitals and flights, etc., which is very interesting. So finally, I wanted to ask about Ellen DeGeneres, who was saying that she's leaving Hollywood. And I wanted to know, is she going into one of these quantum border situations? They said that what's happening is that they're emptying Hollywood so that any satanic members, whether they are perpetrators or victims, can now be dispersed. I said, is she going to a secure location and where she's still going to be able to continue to work? And they said that in her current capacity, she will be allowed to work, but only up to a certain income bracket, so that things on the surface appear to be normal. And this was and she was allowed to do this in exchange for information on other perpetrators within the cult, the Hollywood cult, the satanic cult, and that she has been assisting with the P. Diddy or Puff Daddy case. So finally, I watch readings on YouTube, tarot readers, and what I've been noticing a lot recently is there's been a lot of readings where they have the tower. Now, the tower in the tarot cards is often a very sudden, shocking event. I'll just read you the definition of the tower. The tower represents sudden change or upheaval. As most of the cards in tarot imply a gradual change, but the tower is a symbol of chaos and can indicate catastrophic change. It shows the tower symbol often shows a chaotic scene of a tower being struck by lightning and catching on fire, and often there are people jumping from the tower, and it reminds us that there's always divine intervention even in times of chaos. So a lot of readers are picking up the towers both on collective readings and individuals readings, and so I just wanted to have a little look around what that might be suggesting. So I said all these towers in the tarot readers readings that I've been watching on YouTube, why is that happening? And they said that the towers reflect how the universe's vibrations have now reached a frequency where everyone must start to walk on the ascension pathway or choose to depart at a soul level. They said in order to start the ascension pathway, not only must our light levels be of a certain level, but also we must have balanced all of our karma from all of our lifetimes. And in some cases, we have also chosen to balance our ancestral karma. They said the rapture is this period of time right now, and it is an energetic frequency where people choose at a soul level, at a soul contract level, to walk towards enlightenment. The rapture is enlightenment, a moment of profound realization of spiritual understanding where you feel and know that you are connected to all that is. Hope you've really enjoyed this information today. Please continue to share and like all the content on locals.com, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.